Together, we're learning how to have peace in the process of everyday business ownership by improving one step at a time how we think and what we do. I'm your host, Amy Stout. Okay, first of all, if you're here for a fun time, this is your episode because my guest today is so fun, so funny, so great to listen to, and I always just have the best conversations with her. And on top of all of that, she has been diving in to the concept of a weekly email in the last year. So she just celebrated a full year of sending an email every single week. And she is a small business owner and she does sort of talk about her services, but she more just wants to build connection and be top of mind for people. And that is the point of her email list. And so, number one, if you are a small business owner that wants to start an email list and you just don't know where to start, or you have the objections of like, what do I write? Or I'm not a writer, or I don't have the time. Like, we got into all of the specifics, just overall advice for someone wanting to start an email list. But if you are additionally someone who is, number one, wondering how to incorporate your personality into your email, and number two, wondering how you can write an email but not be salesy, like you don't like vibe with the sales pushy stuff, that is a lot of what ERIN's email is about. And so that's a lot of what we talked about. So I hope you have the best time listening to this. And so let's go ahead and get into the conversation. My curly redhead friend, thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I'm elated, to say the least.
Our conversation pre-recording was the fact that we might be, trying to outdo each other with our curls today. But if you're on YouTube, you will see that I have straightened out my hair today. So ERIN gets to be the spotlight curly girl, and I'm here for it.
Thank you for bowing out. That was a great host move.
Super intentional on my part as well. Oh my gosh. Well, I love every conversation we have, and I love that we've just struck up a friendship, even though we're across the country from each other and in different time zones. But hey, we make it work, and we always have fun and solve the problems of the world when we're on our calls.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really funny to have been sprinting around the house a little bit, getting ready instead of folding laundry and talking to you. And we have really good list of questions and stuff to get through today, and I'm really excited for it. But it's just a little bit different vibe than catching up and asking a couple thought-provoking questions. But I already got a link up of something that I need to look up from our pre-conversation notes. So
and we are always sharing. Did you hear about this thing? I love it. Yeah. I was like, oh, I have to eat my snack before we start instead of because I'm usually eating while we talk.
Yeah.
But anyways, here we are, and you guys are going to love this conversation because ERIN is truly the email marketing queen, specifically the personality infused email marketing queen. And we're going to get into that and kind of have this partly sharing your personal experience, of course, but then kind of drawing the bigger themes out of it that people can take if they want to really focus in on their emails and make them really amazing, like yours. So before we jump in, go ahead and share a little bit about you and your business, and can talk about your newsletter now, or we can save that one.
Well, get into it. Thank you so much for having me. It is a delight and a pleasure. My name's ERIN. My business is RubyWorks Co. I am primarily a web designer, but honestly, I'm a generalist by nature, and I call myself a super curious learn-it-all. So some of my background includes being a marketing manager and a brand manager for a startup, an executive assistant for some VPs at a big university. I have done a lot of operations and hospitality stuff. I am just a super curious learn-it-all. And so getting into building a business, having seen what I've seen and done what I've done, I knew that email marketing would be a part of it. So I started Weird Magic, which is my weekly email newsletter. I launched it 52 weeks ago today. And I just knew that an email was going to be the backbone of my business, even though I'm figuring my business out. And Weird Magic is the title because you should always have a title, or have a name for it so it can become a thing that people talk about. But there's this phrase that I say very like haphazardly that caught on, which is like My Life is Weird and Magical. So it's a storytelling newsletter about my life is weird and magical, titled Weird Magic.
I need you to help me name the Peaceful Entrepreneur newsletter.
I would love to.
Okay, we'll have a brainstorm sesh. Pin that for our next conversation.
Sure, sure. Who's taking
Because
notes today, me or you?
so the note taker, the AI note
Excellent.
taker. But yeah, it's so true. Like, give it a name so that it can be a thing. That's like
Yeah,
point
really
number
quick.
one.
It needs to have a name. It needs to be regular. I think weekly, I could be convinced otherwise. Name, cadence, and you have to have like some sort of structure to it so people know what to expect. And then the
Yeah,
rest is like really playful and fun and it's yours. So you get to do whatever you want with it.
I love it. Okay, let's dive into that. So,
Yeah.
overarching thoughts and tips for small business owners listening to this who want to use email marketing. What do you think?
The reason I started it and like the number one thing that I wish people would utilize it for instead of like just viewing it as another task on your to-do list, because I know there's so many things we feel like we have to do. Full disclosure, I just started a series of on Instagram that's essentially like what I'm doing instead of updating my website as a web designer. So like I know I know how much pressure it is to do all the things and to be all the things, especially when you're just starting out. I'm less than 2 years in business. I've pivoted, I've learned, I've taken on projects that I should have taken on, etc. So in order to like shift the mindset from viewing it as something that another thing that you just have to do, really take it on and shift it to two things. One, connecting with your community. A storytelling newsletter. I don't write salesy emails, and we'll get to that. Sometimes I do. It's like maybe 5% of the time. And I highlight what I'm working on, looking into my like exact structure. But it's about connection. Since so many people need websites and I'm a web designer and I also do strategy calls and all of the things, because again, generalist, I just wanted to be top of mind for people, whether or not we ever work together. I wanted them to know and feel emotionally connected to somebody that that's very hireable. So the connection based side of it. The other thing too is like writing is a skill that you will always be able to utilize because it's a subset of communication. And, really, really effective communicators are, that's like one of the best traits for leaders. So I have always been a good writer. I had some essays, that did well in high school and college, and that's where I could like make up points in classes that I wasn't reading. So I could make up with writing. But the last year of writing, I got a lot better. Like it's really interesting. So just like shifting it from a have to do to a really like connection based activity where you get to utilize your existing community, not just like leads or your audience, as well as leveraging writing as a skill that you will keep forever.
So good. And those two answers also apply to this question, but why is email specifically a good choice for someone to have as part of their marketing strategy?
You own your list. Like social media is great. I love social media. As a web designer, I have feelings about it in terms of like it's for me, it's top of funnel. It's not like my whole strategy, but your email list is you own and you get to do whatever you want with that. And you have a lot more control over what gets delivered and actually you're not relying on an algorithm. And then also like websites. You also own your domain and you can direct traffic there. So I think that email is really great because it gets to be as visual as you want. So like a lot of times I'm writing some of my best emails and even the one that flopped, like I'm writing at 9 p.m. on a Monday in my sweatpants. Like I may or may not have a glass of wine. Like you get to show up however you want with email. It's a lot less performative.
Yeah, I like that, and I want to hear your process because I've been kind of all over the place with how I feel about emails and sending emails, and I've gone through seasons of sending regular ones and monthly and then to nothing, and then now I just jumped to weekly, and it's beautiful because you could batch them all at once
Oof.
for a month, and just like polish them off every week before you send them. And that works really
Mm-hmm.
well. But then, like, last night, I was supposed to send an email this morning. Last
Sure.
night, I opened up my Flowdesk and I realized that I had not drafted anything
Yeah.
for today. And I was like, and so it was at like 6 p.m. and I was like, I don't have the brain power for this.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll just get up and do it very first thing tomorrow morning because, like we were talking about before with
Mm-hmm.
chronotypes, look it up.
Mm-hmm.
I do my best work first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And I did. And I was like, and I like just wrote it up and sent it out. And I was like, wait, this is beautiful. Like I can prep it 4 weeks in advance, or I can literally write it and send it in a morning. And it works. It's great. Everything's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. My process a lot of times looks like that. I send mine at 6 a.m. So, because that's the best time for morning and I'm on the West Coast. And a lot of my audience is on the West Coast. So I have to do it at least one day in advance, but like I was doing it until 9:30 p.m. last night because there's a lot of linking in this morning's episode. There's this little highlight reel. So my process looks different. Year two, I plan on I plan on batching and infusing some strategy, but right now I am just telling stories and what's on my mind. And luckily, I have a lot of really close friends or former coworkers that will basically prompt me, like, when are you going to tell this story? And I have to say, but I will answer your question. But one of the cutest things that I didn't realize until I started Weird Magic. So I knew email was important. Sarah at Between the Lines Copy has an email marketing course, and I took that, and that definitely taught me all of the basics and all the things you need to know in regards to like welcome sequence and building your audience and how to launch. And that was really, really immensely helpful for me. But besides besides those like technical things, I learned that I realized through this that culturally my family tells stories. Like now that we've done it, I can't even, and there's like an episode where I talk about this, but it's a very, very normal thing to be like at my parents' table, like dining room table. I have like so many vivid memories of like my dad telling a story and my mom fact checking it and my dad like rolling his eyes, like it's a story, let me tell it. And she's always right. Like I had to call her and I've had to call her multiple times and ask for the details on things. So like realizing that storytelling was a fundamental part of my family culture has also really helped me feel more connected in that way because we have totally different career paths. My parents and sister both or all three do the same things. They live really close to each other and I'm like this weird little outlier, but I have a thing that's really connected to our family culture and that feels really, really good to me. A successful thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to plug that also Weird Magic over the year has maintained a 68% open rate. So all 52 episodes, 100 plus subscribers, we're averaging that open rate. And that feels really good. But as far as process goes, I have not like a really big drawn out strategy. That is something I want to impose in year two, but I really have like a running Google Doc list of like just one line of like, oh, these are stories I should tell. And then when I'm inspired, it's usually like on a walk or like I'm at the store, like something happens. Then I'll like write it out a little bit more in a note. And so then I'll have some points and I'll like mark what it ties into because sometimes the stories will tie into like a branding or a website or something like that, some like tangible takeaway. A lot of times they don't, and they're just stories. So I will sit down and do what I call like a fun write, and then and that's in Google Docs, and then I will put it into Flowdesk. I don't usually write in Flowdesk because I won't catch errors as easily, typos and stuff. So then I will go a different day or at least like a different chunk of time. I will go into Flowdesk, copy and paste, format it, add the links. And then as you've noticed at the end of every episode, I put what I'm working on, what I'm listening to, and what I'm singing along to. So then I have to link those too.
I love that. So it's
Yeah.
a multi-step process. Like I think in my head, I'm like, email newsletter is like a singular item. And like I expect myself to do all of it in one sitting. And like that's just not the
For
way
s-
it
for
works.
stories, it's how my brain works better. Like once I take a play off and I step back from it, then I can see once I've wrestled with it a little bit, I can see maybe how to tie into it a little bit. I'm not necessarily a beginning, middle, and end girly, which is obvious, but I do like to pull maybe themes together or like call back. It's very conversational. I write the newsletter as if I am having coffee with a friend. So it's like so casual. Even today episode, I was like talking through a bunch of highlights. One of my favorite lines is like, I never expected this many people to care about this man's pants or this man's pants. And those are linked to different previous episodes. And I said some other things. And then I was like, in parentheses and italics, I'm a big italics girl. I'm like, oh, BT dubs. If you didn't already notice, those are links to the episodes they're referencing. Like, hey, just like a quick aside. I do a lot of little written asides.
Yeah.
Um, and so reading it out loud and doing it in two chunks are two of the biggest things that have helped me write emails that feel like me and feel like they're finished. I don't always do it. I don't. But like the ones that feel best to me, I do
Yeah.
tend to do that process. And the fun write
Yeah.
can sometimes just take me 45 minutes. Like I can still turn out like a really good email in 90 minutes if I'm,
Mm-hmm.
clued in.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, I really want to get into the story versus sales. But before we
Yeah.
go there, I want to just get a little bit more of the foundation of Weird
Thank you.
Magic because other people too are going to, if they're thinking about writing a newsletter or if they have one but they don't have a strategy around it, there's these benchmarks that we've got to hit, right? Like we're talking
Yeah.
about the name and all of then the process, but get into the like what is it, who is it for, what
hmm
is your goal with it before we dive into more of the
Yeah.
strategy.
Great. So, really quickly, it is a story-based newsletter centered around connection, and it is really focusing more on me as a person versus me as a web designer or a generalist. And the reason behind that is I think personal brands can pivot and sell anything. I think we've seen it with some of our favorite influencers, some of our favorite just like celebrities, anybody that's in the limelight. When you have a personal brand and that personal following, I think you can pivot and sell anything. And as a person who is a web designer now, has other skills, intends to like pivot and navigate the world. I really wanted to build I was kind of pushed into it, but we've talked about that. It dawned on me that I needed a personal brand, and that's kind of like a gift that I have. So it is story and connection based, and I do sell in it sometimes. I'm not saying that I never sell, but the the quest is to tell a story and connect with people. The audience is the first chunk of the audience was really friends and family, former coworkers, my college teammates, clients. And then I have some freebies and lead captures that definitely funnel people into it. If you find me and you just subscribe to Weird Magic, you get a welcome email that sets the scene of like, hey, I'm Erin. Here's a little about me. Like, here are some of my favorite episodes. This is what to expect and not to expect. And I'm not for everybody. So I do have a welcome email that kind of braces people. And then it's like, okay, can't wait to see you on Wednesday. Um, and then I like having a name for it. I think that breeds a little bit of culture around it. But really, the intent was always just to like build an engaged audience. And it was never about forcing people on the list to feel like they have to buy something. I just really want the people on my list to be aware of what I'm doing and what I'm working on. So I need to do it again, but there's been a time where a big focus was updating my website or updating my design portfolio. So then I would just like tell us a little quick story of what's going on and then plug and literally link and do some mock-ups for the portfolio that I've been updating.
Yeah. So it's a seamless integration.
Yeah, and there's times like I warned people like I'm gonna start after the 6 month mark. I was like, guys, I'm gonna start selling stuff. And guess what? No one subscribes from that. Unsubscribes from other things, but none from me starting to sell because I was really afraid. I was really afraid to sell socially. And I'm not anymore because everybody understands that a business needs to make money. And I'm not, and it's more, and I'm viewing it more as invitations instead of that. So, one
You
thing I'll
need
do when
this
I am
thing.
selling, I'm not concise at all today. One thing I do if I am selling is I'll do like a little bulletin at the top of the email. It's like, hey, I'm running this special, or hey, I have a few more options open for this. Let's dive in. So I just do it like it doesn't usually take away from the thing that I've already promised. And that's kind of important to me.
Yeah. I like that. I'm like making a list in my head of like a carousel post I could make on Instagram of like email marketing tips.
Yeah,
Because
let's
you've
get
got
into it.
so
Tag me.
many, like you've got so many, and we're not even like halfway through these questions, and I'm obsessed. I love it so much. You've like you said, like you could tell, you really have learned and grown so much from doing this for a year and just
Thank
committing
you.
and doing it.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure
I'm
there were
not a
some that you
big,
were like, "Ah, I don't want to do this."
oh, many weeks. I thought about going on a sabbatical like all the time. I am not usually like a big picture person. Like I'm very good at reverse engineering. So it dawned on me like 3 weeks ago, like, oh, I'm about to be a person that's done a newsletter for a year. Like, how crazy is that? And not in a brag way, like in a mutually shocked way.
I feel the same way about certain accomplishments that are happening in my life that I'm not publicly talking about yet right now. But I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I did that.
Wait, that actually leads me into something that I really want to say. I have had episodes that flopped. I've had episodes where like a former coworker who I love and gives me such wonderful feedback was like, "Hey, this didn't hit." Like I've had things I was trying to write in the tone as somebody else. And I've had people guest write, like it's never going to be perfect. Like the goal, your list is never going to be this small again. So it's okay to take a risk. And like it's just one line in their inbox. Like we unsubscribe or we open or we ignore a lot of other emails. So like give your if you're thinking about starting one and you haven't yet because you're having like a little bit of like perfectionism or just like hesitance about like not being good at it yet, they're not all gonna be good. And it doesn't matter. Like think about the last time you actually unsubscribed from something. It took a really annoying amount of emails from Sephora for you to unsubscribe.
True.
Just try. You'll get better at it. You'll learn and ask for feedback. I have a rule that and I say it in my like welcome email about the ground rules, but like I will reply to everybody that replies to me every time. You're going to stop replying to me. I'm not going to stop replying to you. 52 weeks of that.
Yeah. I love that. So good. Okay, another objection that I feel like people are going to have, and we've touched on it, but is like, what do I write? What do I say? How do I come up with something every single week? And so you've shared, like, okay, when a story pops into my head, I'll write it down. I have a running list, and then I'll kind of like flesh it out based on something that's pertinent to what's happening with me right now. But like, how
Yeah.
do you come up with what to say?
So that branches into two questions because you know I'm an overshare. Like, is it, and so if you're in a moment where you don't know what to write and you're feeling stuck or you're strapped for time, because I think the hardest thing and one thing I was really scared of is like what happens when I ruin my streak? What happens when I get busy? What happens when I'm stressed? And one, you tell a shorter story. Two, if you
I
have
know.
somebody in your
Exactly. It's like just record a shorter podcast, write a shorter email. It's fine. You're still putting it out.
so there's that. Also, like a list. One of the so Sarah BTL Copy, who you called me the email queen, email marketing queen. Thank you. She is the creator of the email marketing universe. Like she's phenomenal. She just sent out one that's like her number one tip for engagement is just to like write what's on your mind. So I last summer was super busy, was not saying no to any sort of trip and was going on everything. And so I was just like, hey, here's what I'm up to. And here are like 17 reminders of what's going on in my life. And people liked that. You can resend episodes and just call it, or emails. I call mine episodes because I have main character energy. But you can resend a replay. So you can say, like, hey, this did really well, or this is like this. So I wanted to resend that this week. And if it's been 6, 12, 8, 10, 40 weeks since somebody read that, it might be fun for them to reconnect with it. Or new people on your list will read it for the first time. I usually just put replay in the subject line so people know. So we have lists, we have guest writers, we have repurposing content, like when I was doing portfolio stuff on my website, shorter stories. Also, one time I was really slammed and I just screenshot a Target gift card and was like, hey, just make sure it doesn't auto load. like reload. I was like, I think I just sent like $50 out to my list. It's a business expense. Great. Um, but also if you're feeling like you have longer stories to tell, put it in chapters. Like you could easily break down a story into 3 parts. Um, you can have a dream that you could tell to share about a dream. About to, or just like a zany idea. This is so much fun. Okay. A zany idea that I had recently is that a future business venture I want to do is apartment audits for straight men. I want to, yes, at a few points in time, I would be seeing somebody and they would say something along the lines of, well, it's not a bachelor pad because I have this. And then I would list off 4 or 5 clear tells that it was a bachelor pad. And I learned that they're not very receptive to that when you're dating them. But I think as an outside consultant, so this is going to be an episode. I had a
Genius.
just like zany idea of like, remember when that guy was like, this isn't a bachelor pad? And I was like, you have dull knives, your couch is a futon, and you are just hanging clothes on the wall as if it is art. We did not see each other for very long, and I was like 26. But that should be a service. Like, if you
Yeah.
want to be less of a bachelor pad, have somebody come in and help you. I'll make a registry like Target and IKEA, Costco. Like, that would be so great. So I just had like a zany idea, and I'm like, let's make something out of this.
I love it.
So play with it.
I love it.
It
Yeah,
doesn't have to be substantial to be entertaining.
exactly. I mean, I wrote an email was like the 15 books I've read so far this year, and it had nothing to do with the episode that came out that day, but I got so much response.
And like 7 movies I like wouldn't be able to live my life without, or
Yeah.
like I have to tell you about the best like service experience I ever had. And then you talk about customer experience or client experience. Like
Yeah.
it's really easy if you're willing to be imaginative. Not easy, it's a skill. So
Mm.
like people can
It
learn it
can
and
flow
practice it.
naturally though.
Yeah. I told a story about how I thought I lost my wallet one time. And I
Yeah.
was like, I was just getting out of the sauna and like cold tub because my gym, I'm obsessed with it. And so usually I like leave like sopping wet in like a swimsuit and in a towel or sweatpants or something. So I called the front desk person who I'm like obsessed with. And I'm like, hey, I know last time you saw me, I was sopping wet and had no pants, but contrary to popular belief, like I have it all together, except for have you seen my wallet? And that's a whole story in itself.
Yeah. Love it.
So your life is interesting. You just have to make it detailed. And if you are willing to be playful
Yeah.
or really reflective, you're going to notice how much connection you can draw from it and how
Yeah.
entertaining or thoughtful you can make it.
Yeah. Okay, this is the segue into the personality thing. And this was my
Yeah.
initial like idea for the topic of this episode. And so because I feel like I know I have a personality, I just don't have like a quote unquote like big personality. And so I feel like I write myself off and I'm like, "Oh, I don't know how to like include
Mm.
personality into what I'm writing because like I don't have that big of a personality." And then there's some people who just have a naturally bigger personality so it just comes across. But
Yeah.
I know that everybody can infuse personality into their copy, and this can be email or this could kind of be a more overarching, like marketing copy kind of conversation. But
Mhm.
how do you, like you're saying, things like your life is interesting, you just have to see it, you have to have the details. Like, how does someone start to shift their mind into thinking about things in a way that will allow them to like get that personality in there?
I think there's a couple exercises for that. I will tell you off the top, like my writing style tends to be a lot of italics, like little asides or disclaimers. And that's how I talk. Like when you and I are in conversation, I'll literally sometimes like cock my head to the side and be like, but this is what's really happening. Um, so I have a specific style, and then in copy, how that shows up is like parentheses, italics, eyebrow headers, like the little part where you say something before you actually get into the thing. These hand motions are
Eyebrow
gonna be
headers. That's
super
so cute. I've never heard that before.
oof. It's a cute term. All my hand motions are gonna be really helpful for the person listening on audio only. But in terms of like how to practice it for yourself instead of just like, well, she said use eyebrow headers. So I know that's not helpful for everybody. Is there's two ways you can do it. One is you can like really imagine the character of yourself that's writing. So like I haven't said this very many times. Ruby is my was my drunk alter ego before, and she's a scammer. She is tricky. She will swindle you. She's nefarious. So I ended up being like, well, if Ruby can get all of this done, maybe she can run a business. And hi, hello. Um,
Here she is.
um, here she is, everybody. You were saying something about big personalities. So Ruby is charismatic, gregarious, delightfully aware of her shortcomings, but also like really persistent and honest and transparent. And like, I try not to be self-deprecating for like energetic and self-belief reasons, but like I'll point out when something flopped. So you can think of like who is your brand voice and like have your writing style embody that, and then hopefully that gives you permission to like maybe exaggerate some parts just as you're leaning into them. Like it's authentic. It's just not always what we really lean into and act on. The other thing that is probably easier and a little bit more practical for our like more literal brained friends is to record yourself telling a story, an 8 or a 10. So I've actually done this where I live with my best friend and she and I will can riff on anything. We call it our morning meetings. And I've recorded a few of the conversations we have back and forth, like on camera, so I could listen and hear them. And the cadence of them, the way that we like go back and forth, that is really, really fun. So I really try to write as if I am telling, and I've used dictation tools. I've played a little bit with that, but it you want it to feel like your tone of voice. For me, the best way that I know how to do is like if you were walking into like a happy hour or a golf session or like whatever your 3 p.m. on Friday happy place is, how like what energy are you bringing to that and tell it from that voice. I think it's it's really, really wonderful to be able, with storytelling, you get to draw attention to things, embellish a little bit. And if you need to be a little bit happier, if you need to go write somewhere different, or if you want to add snarky asides, I have a line in one of my episodes that says, I'm sure somewhere he has a newsletter that's all about me. And like he obviously doesn't. Like it's crazy the way that I write about other people and send it to 130 people. But
So funny
those
though.
sort of insertions are like how I would talk to a friend.
Exactly.
But lean into it. It's one of those things like that magic is there. Everybody has it. It's gonna look different. It might not be as eccentric as mine. If it is, forward it to me. I'd love to read. I'd take some pointers. But like it's one of those things of just like allow yourself to get down to like the root of like a core version of yourself that's really, really fun.
Mm.
People are reading, like, I don't know when you read your emails, but usually it's like at a desk before they have to do something they don't want to do or like before a big day. So, like, let people chuckle.
Yeah. Or if it's not like if you don't want to be the fun person, be the contemplative person and like lean into
Yeah.
that. You know,
Oh
like
my God. Yeah.
whatever you want it to be. Fun is
Reflective.
your personality, you
Yeah.
know?
Thank you. Several of them.
But I feel like for me it's more of that contemplative processing, like sharing vulnerable things that I'm going through as an entrepreneur. Like that's more of my tone.
Yeah, and so with those sort of things, it's a lot easier for me to lean into the bubbly part of me because that's less vulnerable and it's a little bit not performative, but it's safer. I've written a lot of episodes where I'm crying because they're like they feel like I'm bearing my soul. And to that, I want to remind you that like the people that want to read it and engage with it will, and the people that don't will close out. You're just a line in their inbox. But for some people, it's really connective. So if you're going the more con contemplative route, thank you. If you're going the more contemplative route, then sit with it and think about it from different perspectives and offer that because, like we were just saying, when do people read these emails? They're looking to slow down and be present. They're looking for a call in. So if you're developing your voice and it is more contemplative and thoughtful, then maybe your gift is like providing 1 to 2 examples. And so, like, and then asking, what do you think? And sharing that energy with them.
That's what I did this morning.
Yay! Okay, I haven't got to it
That's
yet.
funny.
I've been running around.
Yeah, of my little numbered lists, and then I'm like, what do y'all think?
I do love an email newsletter that prompts you with questions. I'm subscribed to a lot, obviously, but like prompts and questions I think are really helpful because I don't know how many of your listeners are solo entrepreneurs, but like there's times where I don't talk to anybody else all day. So somebody sending me questions to think over and mull over on my walk or while I'm designing is really refreshing a lot of the time.
That's a good section for me to add in. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to hear how it's gone because we're talking about all of these things and your processes and your storytelling and all of that. But like, what's been the result now that it's been a year? Have you made sales even though you're not trying to be salesy? What are some maybe unexpected things that have come out of it? What have you been learning?
I've been learning that I'm a writer and it's okay to call myself that, which is a big thing for me. There have been sales, but my business has always been very like 1 degree of separation. Like I don't get a lot of people coming like out of the blue because I'm not on Pinterest and like, I don't have all those marketing channels set up. I think that the biggest takeaway for me, which is maybe not what listeners want to hear, is like the biggest lesson this last year is that like my authentic self is celebrated by the people around me constantly. And like as a person who really felt like the messaging they got and like all the formative years was they were too much and needed to be toned down, that is radical in like such a heartwarming and sweet way. So that's like my main takeaway from year one is that like I can do this and people like it and I'm stoked on it. And like I said, my goal with it was really to just be top of mind for people in my life. And so now when I have inquiries, a lot of them are like, I have a line in my form that's like, who do I have to thank? Like, how did you find me? And sure, I get a lot from social media, but the majority of them are like friends of friends. And I think my favorite part of like referrals into Weird Magic or referrals into my content because I've developed my brand voice a lot in the last year that shows up on the website that I need to update, but also like in my Instagram content too. And anything that I write is that when you're coming from a friend of a friend, or when a friend of a friend is reaching out, there's so many access points for them to find correlation or connection between what they've heard about me from that other person and me. Like I rarely have, I guess Weird Magic has really leveraged what I can do with referrals because I rarely have a referral that doesn't end up in a contract. So that's also a really cool thing that I like.
It is cool. It is really cool. The top of mind and the allowing people to like know your personality. And so what I'm hearing from you is like the sales from an email newsletter are a bit more indirect.
Yeah, I'm I'm not pushing. It's never meant to be salesy. It's meant to be
Yeah.
developing the personal brand side of things.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that do the sales emails better than me because that's part of what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's never been like just it's never been something that I'm very interested in is like writing salesy emails. This is Weird Magic is the habit that I get to do. It's never something that it's a habit, so sometimes I don't always want to do it in the moment, but it's not an obligation like some of the other things.
Yeah.
If Weird Magic felt like sending contracts, this would be a very different conversation, but it's not a thing that I have to do. And I've really created it as like this fun space in my business and my self-expression.
I love that. Okay, talk more about the one that flopped.
Ugh, okay. So it was too early to do this. Not the sigh. There's this There's this Issa Rae from HBO's Insecure, and she has Hooray and a Prosecco line and everything. She has a speech from years ago where she accepts an award, and she even like acknowledges that like she grew up listening to a bunch of like 80s and 90s hip hop and rap, and they're not humble at all. So she's gonna embody that, and she tells it in that tone. So I tried to emulate like a really intense, more masculine, like not not arrogant, but like I had it was not my tone at all. And I'm reaching for something unknown. And it was just like really inauthentic and kind of hard to read. And that's the one that like my buddy Marshall, who is the most thoughtful reader and offers me so much wonderful feedback. A quick aside is don't worry about feedback from everybody. Like, sure, get the data, the general data, but like, there are a few people that their feedback really matters to me. And I really take it in. And other than that, I just love when people open it. So like I don't weigh on I ask a lot of feedback of like, can you tell me your favorite episode or let me know if this resonated with you? But the episode that flopped was really just like me trying early on, I think it was like episode 6 or 7, to write in a different tone. And my tone wasn't established as much, like I needed a little bit more time. But I also commend myself for doing, by that point, I already had like at least 50 subscribers. So that's huge in a few weeks. So at that, I'm like, commend myself for trying, but it flopped. And I've also had people subscribe and unsubscribe within a matter of days because I'm not for everybody. And like these stories are not for everybody. One of my canned lines is like, this is not a dating newsletter. And then I proceed to like say something about dating. But like, I'm 31 and I live in LA and I've lived a lot of life. Like, there's a lot of good stuff here. Learning strangers is like hilarious.
Those are great
So
stories.
yeah. And they're like, I also like, I have the disclaimers because that's my writing style of like my parents and my therapist are subscribed. So like you don't have to worry. I've never risked anything other than my rental history. Like we're fine. So some episodes, the that's the main one that comes to mind. There's ones that either the subject line wasn't anything interesting or maybe it was too obscure. Like there's certain ones that not every week gets that perfect 68%, but I've also gotten a little bit more comfortable being kind of like brazen with the subject line. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily to me a title of a story. It's kind of
Right.
like just how you get them to open. But I start every
Exactly.
subject line with weird magic and then the number.
Mm-hmm.
So people know what they're looking for. And then I can say something wild, playful,
Mm-hmm.
because
They know
people
what
know
it
what it
is.
is and they're looking
Yeah.
forward to it.
Yeah. Love it. So good. Okay, someone who's starting out, we've given them about 50 tips throughout this last 43 minutes. But what's your overall advice for someone who's like, this all sounds so great. I am all about it. And, then they're me and they're like, I got to do it all tomorrow. What do you need? What do you tell them, the person who's really excited to get started but needs some guidance?
So give yourself a little bit of time to build hype. Like if you don't already have a list, then like I use Flowdesk. I got a code for that. But if you give yourself like I gave myself a month to, get the nerve up and to start talking about it and to set my intention. So like, you know, do the normal strategy things of like write down your objective, write down the routine or the cadence of it, come up with the name. You can pull your audience, but like I developed a wait list and then I really love a welcome email for when people subscribe, but that's still a little bit elective. If you're just starting out, I want to try to not, best case scenario, you have a welcome email, but if you don't, totally fair. Um, and then after you have a name and a cadence, build out a flow desk or whatever marketing you're using, build out an email template that has for sure the name of your newsletter up top and then the content. And then at the end, have a signature, have links to your website, list your services. I have that little section that's like what I'm working on, what I'm singing along to, what I'm listening to. Have like your Instagram or whatever platform that you use highlighted. And and that template also tells people what to expect. And it bonus points if you make it so that if somebody forwards your email, that person has a link to subscribe and a little bit of context about you. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but these people that I send emails to every week, at one of the bottom parts of that email is like, hey, if we haven't met yet, I'm Erin. I'm so glad you're here. You never have to buy anything. Just keep opening my emails. I love taking up space in your inbox. If you need to subscribe, here's the link to do so. So build out your template and then just start writing, start trying, read it out loud, edit it, and figure out what your objective is. Like mine is to be top of mind and to build a personal brand. If you want to be seen as a thought leader and you're more contemplative, then maybe queue up and share like an article that you read every once in a while. Um, but build a structure where that you can just throw content into and it's replicable, it's relatable, and it is regular.
Love it. That's great. Just a little gift wrap box of your email starter pack.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Okay, before we get to my last question of what's giving you peace right now, is there anything else that you'd like to add to this convo? Because we've covered a lot of ground. I want to make sure you got to say
Yeah.
everything that was on your heart.
Two things. Thank you. Great question. One is just have integrity with that unsubscribe button and with integrity on the unsubscribe, but meaning like when people unsubscribe, let them go. Girl, let them go. This isn't a conversation. Let them go. And then use that, like, because you really respect the unsubscribes, use that as permission that like the people on your list want to be there. It's fine. Like, if you want to take a little bit of a risk, if you want to write a newsletter that flopped like I did, like go for it. Because if people don't like it, they will unsubscribe. Turn off unsubscribe notifications and do your thing. Because you're just a line in their inbox. People like you and you're figuring it out. So like I want to take a little bit of pressure off because not everybody listening is necessarily going to be telling stories about a bunch of guys' pants or like eating shrimp tails or the time they got fired and didn't realize it. Like I get it. But yeah, as long as you're respecting the unsubscribe button, you have nothing to worry about. Just keep showing up. You'll get there. I also definitely offer strategy sessions and all of the things. So if anybody wants to talk specifically to me about it, I would love to. rubyworks.co. But another thing is like, and I say that you've heard me say this, another thing to take the pressure off and just like empower people to try it is like, in order to be an expert, you have to be a novice. I don't think, like, I have an athletic background. I lift weights for fun, like really heavy ones. I would never, and it's become really obvious to me that like we have this really fake idea that people are instant successes. And that's how some people are, but the majority of people put a lot of sweat equity and time and learning in. So there are obviously ways to speed up the learning process, like bringing in somebody that knows more than you, like massive amounts of repetition. But one thing that I say as somebody who's like, I started web design in 2015 and I'm still learning and getting better all the time is that like in order to be an expert, you have to be a novice. So give yourself 3 months where you send 12 emails without judging yourself. Like try, show up, like give yourself a solid go, but it's gonna be better than you think if you keep showing up. And some of them are going to flop and nobody cares because they're still giggling or they're still like contemplating and doing all the things. Like, my examples might have been really specific, and maybe not everybody is going to be writing emails about, the gay bar they took 800 student athletes to in Costa Rica that they didn't realize was a gay bar because they just cared about the mojitos. But like, I have some pretty wild stories and I love being able to tell them. And that doesn't have to be your thing, but like, you can still be really good at this. You just have to give yourself permission to try and to like fumble a little bit, but keep going. I fumble a lot.
Yeah.
There's typos. Nobody cares. Do your best. I used to like open my emails and first thing in the morning with anxiety and like search for errors or like things I could have done better. And it's like, man, that's not what people are worried about. Connection is gold in this attention economy, and people love that they get to feel connected to you.
Yeah. So good. Those are really good pep
That's my
talks.
TED Talk. That's
I
my TED
love
Talk.
them.
Thank you.
I love them.
Thank you.
So good. Okay, last question is what's bringing you peace right now?
I've returned to walks with audiobooks instead of podcasts, so I have a little bit more of that. But recently, I've just been feeling, because I had a birthday last month, a couple weeks ago. I've just been feeling like I'm on the right path, like a resound knowing of like, I don't know what it is really. Like, that's a little fuzzy, but it's like wildly clear to me that like I'm where I'm supposed to be. And that, our belief systems, like this idea that like there's somebody else handling it for you is, I'm super grateful. They're doing really great work, like phenomenal. So slowing down and giving myself, accepting that I need time to rest and that I'm not just like a robot that can produce 20 hours a day and that my creative energy needs rest in order to like breathe more creative. I've just been so happy and grateful for where I'm at, and I'm really enjoying the process, which is giving me a lot of peace.
That's amazing. I love that. That's such a good place to be in.
Thanks. I can't wait. I make this joke every once in a while. Like, I thought I was going to be rich by now. Like I
I love it.
I
Hey, the
never
seed,
like,
you got to plant the seeds, you got to water the seeds, you got to wait for them to grow.
and there's so many interesting turns. Like, I didn't expect to have a newsletter that did this well. Like, this is my, how many
Yeah.
podcasts have I done on this? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just along for the ride. It's been so fun, and it just feels more and more true.
Love it. Great place to
It's been
end.
it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I want to be
Yes.
all of your guys' friends, rubyworks.co, and
Yes.
I always enjoy getting to talk to you, Amy. You're the best.
Likewise. Likewise. Yes, I'll link all your things down in the description so people can find you easily. But thanks for being on, and we will see everybody next week. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. Don't forget to connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and we would love it if you would leave a review wherever you're listening. We'll see you next week for more tips for how to become a peaceful entrepreneur.